Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hello, everybody. I'm Anita Alexandra. I'm an alcoholic. It is wonderful to be here today. I've come from Washington, D.C., to speak at this meeting, and I've never come 3,000 miles to speak at an AA meeting before, and I have to say this was worth the trip. This is a fantastic group, and I feel so lucky to be here. And thank you, Siddiqui, for asking me to come. My sobriety date is March 5th, 1990. So I have been sober 23 years, and I got sober when I was 27. I'm 51 now. I started drinking and drugging very young, at about 12 years old, and I had come out of a pretty horrific childhood. My parents came from Bombay, India, and there was a lot of drama and chaos in the home, and my father left. My mother had a nervous breakdown, tried to commit suicide with me in the next room when I was about 6. And then we had a series of people come and live with us because she was mentally unstable. And the main consistency that I had in my life as a young person was my school. I went to a small private Quaker school called Friends in Baltimore, Maryland. That's where I grew up. And I was really lucky to be in that environment because there was, quiet serenity and sanity. And it was the one thread in my life where there was order. And I carried a lot of pain from my early life. And I started drinking actually with my family, with my father, when we would go out to lunch once a week. That was my time with him after my parents split up when I was 6. And we would always go out to eat, and I would get some wine or some beer. And the first time I remember being intoxicated, I was 8 years old, and I loved it because it took me out of myself. And I'm an only child, and so being with myself and just kind of checking out came very naturally to me. I started doing it very young with music. Primarily the Rolling Stones got me through my childhood. I would just listen to music all the time, and it just took me into this other world. And, anything was better than the world I was in, it felt like. And so really, checked out with the music and just loved it, and still love it to this day, But I discovered using on a daily basis when I was 11. And I started with the alcohol and then got into drugs. And I went through, all the drugs pretty much that you can think of in my years. And so it was 15 years that I was drinking and drugging. And I would say the first 10, I had a lot of fun. The last 5 were pure hell because nothing worked anymore. It's, like it works for a while, and then it started to turn, and I kept trying to turn it back to the way it used to be, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And so my solution to that was just to do more drugs and different drugs and, anything I could get my hands on. And, there was a lot of cocaine and pills and hallucinogens. And I had several years using opiates and heroin, and then went back to pills. And the last year before I got sober, which I started really hitting my bottom in 1989, I was on the pills, and I had gone to college at Johns Hopkins and kind of, made it through and graduated without doing a lot of work. And I felt like if I kept it looking okay on the outside, and as long as I got good grades, I was okay. There was a really heavy emphasis on education in my life. And so I felt like school was really important. And after I graduated, like all hell broke loose. I decided to be a professional bartender while all of my classmates were going on to medical school, but this was what I wanted to do. And that was where I got into the heroin, which was the thing that really brought me to my bottom, because it was so difficult to do. I mean, it was so much trouble to get it and pay for it. And I had money because I was bartending, but it was just a lot of trouble. And that really just kind of brought me down and exhausted me. And of course, alcohol was the constant all the time, no matter what was going on. And, when I couldn't get drugs, I could always get alcohol. And I was pretty much intoxicated 24/7. So I missed a lot of normal growth and development that people have, starting at age 12. Because I was basically anesthetized for 15 years. And it was the last 3 years that were really, really horrible because I couldn't get clean and I couldn't get high. No matter what I did, nothing worked anymore. And it was just constant, agonizing misery. And I got my second DUI in the fall of '89, and that was really what brought me to the end of the bottom, the end of the end. And I got it on Thanksgiving. And, so it was in these months that I was really working through to the bottom. And, at this point, I had moved from Baltimore to Washington, D.C. I got a fellowship teaching French literature at Catholic University. And all I could do was take enough pills to get there and teach and go back home. And I would spend all my time in my room, mostly in bed. I mean, I just was really, I lived this small little life and no interactions with people and extremely isolated and lonely. And it just got so dark and so small that I just couldn't take it anymore. And, so things were not going well on the outside, but things were really not going well on the inside. And I remember I had a moment of clarity, on an average day in my bedroom, and I knew I needed to get some kind of help. And I started reaching out for help, and it seemed like as soon as I took that first little step, I got into a flow of one thing leading to another thing and another thing and another thing. And it was like the world just started opening up again. And I found this program through someone that I was involved with at the time. And when I was really ready in February of '90, I really took to this program because when I got here, I could see that you all were having a good time. And that's what I wanted. I was not enjoying my life at all, ever. And I got sober in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And there were a lot of, like in this room today, a lot of young, beautiful, interesting, accomplished people, middle-aged, older people who were vital and interesting. And there was just an incredible mix of everyone. And the main thing I remember feeling when I got there was, these are my people. And I just had this sense that I belonged here. And I could see in you all that this thing worked because you kept coming and you were enjoying yourselves and you had confidence. And that was something I really didn't have, that I really wanted. I was absolutely terrified when I got sober. I was afraid to keep using, and I was afraid to live because I did not know how to live. And I mean, even the basic things, I did not know how to talk to people, how to go to work without using, how to go to a social event, how to, be in the world, how to do anything. And so I had to learn everything all over from the start with little tiny baby steps. And the first couple of years, I really just focused on learning how to be a human being and not using. And I told myself, hey, you can do anything you want to do that makes you feel better. Just don't pick up a drink or a drunk. And so I gave myself a very wide berth. And it worked for me. I drank a lot of coffee. I dated a lot of guys. In fact, it was the guys, the cute guys, that kept me coming back. In the beginning, it was just great. They were everywhere and they wanted to talk. And, it was like all of a sudden I had people in my life. I was out of the bedroom, So I started having a good time, for the first time in years and years. And, that was really important for me to find a group that had people that I was attracted to. Many years before, I tried to go to an AA meeting, and it was a crowd I just couldn't relate to. I didn't go back for 6 years, but everything kind of clicked in 1990. And the main thing I remember about early sobriety was anxiety. Like, that defined my state of being. I was just terrified and anxious all the time. My friends were constantly saying, calm down, calm down. I was just a wreck because I was coming off of alcohol and all these drugs, and I didn't go to rehab because I wouldn't even consider the idea. It just terrified me too much, and I think I had too much pride. And but I was willing to come to the program. And so I came to 2 or 3 meetings a day, and I got sober. And after a while, I started realizing, like, I didn't have any clue what to do with my life, and it really started bothering me because I started noticing that people my age were married and having kids. And I had like this mentality of like a 12-year-old in a 27-year-old's body. And, I felt like I had just had this huge gap of lost time. And I realized that I hadn't developed and that I was very far behind and that I needed to do something with myself. And I agonized over that for a long time. I did not want to have a baby. And I did not know what I wanted to do. I remember one time this guy said to me, well, you either have to get married and have babies or do something with yourself. And so that kind of gave me at least 2 choices. It was like a general framework. It gave me a clue. Okay, you got to do something with yourself. And so I actually waited and did nothing for a long, and I was misusing the 3rd step, hoping that the answer would just come to me, And I prayed and nothing happened. I prayed and nothing happened. I prayed and nothing happened. Finally, I started taking just a little bit of action, like I did when I first got sober. I bought some books about like how to find your niche and your direction, and I took some adult education classes, to try to figure out like what am I supposed to be doing with myself, And I had gone to Hopkins, and I would constantly have people say to me, well, why aren't you doing something with that? And I didn't know, and I couldn't explain, like, well, I was into drugs and alcohol for a long time, and that just kind of took over everything. But that was the truth. And so after a couple of years, and after taking some action, I was given some direction, I now believe by God, about what to do with myself. And I ended up going back to graduate school and studying to be a psychotherapist. And it was so incredible because from the minute I was in my first class, I could feel God's presence with me. Like I was in this flow and I knew I was where I was supposed to be. But I was absolutely terrified to go back to school because I had tried to go to graduate school 2 other times when I was in my active addiction. And because I could not get out of bed in the morning, I could not show up to class, and I couldn't do any work because of my addiction, I thought I wasn't good enough. And I didn't think I would be able to handle the work. You know, I really didn't believe I could do it. And so I went back, I got a master's, and then I got a doctorate in psychology. And I just kind of kept going with all this. And it was during my studies that I met my husband, Ron, who's here today. And Ron and I met, I was in an internship, and I had this supervisor who hated me. And we were having a lot of problems in this internship, and I would go home in tears. And then there was a patient on the ward who knew me from AA. And he kind of made it obvious that he knew me, and all the staff wanted to know, like, how do you know this guy? And so I was kind of baffled about how to handle myself. And so I wanted to talk to Ron. And a friend of mine in the program introduced us, and we talked about that. And I think it was less than 3 months later, we got married. And let me tell you, neither one of us was looking to get married, especially to each other. And it was the weirdest thing, because it was like this force, like, just put us together, and we could not get away from each other. We could not leave each other. We had a horribly difficult time for the first few years. I mean, it was just really, we fought and struggled, and there were times where I was afraid I was going to kill him, you know. And that actually got me to Al-Anon. And so now I've been there. I've been in AA, 23 years. I've been in Al-Anon, 17 years. And that's been incredibly helpful. If anyone is struggling with relationships, I highly recommend it. It'll, there's a wonderful saying, AA kept me from suicide and Al-Anon kept me from homicide. And it's really, really true. So, and I'm here to tell you today, we're celebrating our 15-year wedding anniversary next week. And it's better than anything I could have imagined, and I'm just so grateful for him. In my journey in recovery and with my work, I've had the opportunity to write 4 books. I've written 4 self-help books. I've got an addiction book, a life manual, daily meditation book. And then my newest book is about relationships, and it's called How to Stay Together Whether You Want to or Not. And it's dedicated to Ron. But I have to say, as a sober woman, I've been able, because of the 3rd and the 11th step and taking action a day at a time, I've been able to put together a life that has some meaning and purpose. And that's a really important thing, because, life is about more than having money or looking pretty or knowing the right people. I believe that what's really important is feeling like your life has some meaning and that you've done something to make the world a better place. And professionally, I mentioned that I had this feeling that it was really right from my first class in graduate school. I've gone on to have a wonderful practice in Washington. I have 2 offices. I'm a regular contributor on television, on various news stations, when they have things that they want people to talk about. They'll call me up and do interviews. And I am just amazed at what has happened. And it's living proof that there is a God. And that is something that I really did not understand when I got here, because I wasn't raised with any particular spiritual direction. I grew up Quaker, and we would go and sit in silent Quaker meetings, but there was no talk about anything. I didn't understand anything. And we've learned in here that there are two types of spiritual experiences. There's the slow, gradual kind, and the educational type, and then there's the sudden type. And I have to say that I have had both. I started having small spiritual experiences pretty much, as soon as I came into the program. And then in 2009, I had a big one, and it was the sudden type. And that actually led to my getting baptized in the Episcopal Church and finding a faith, which I never would have imagined I would ever do. The reason I have a double first name is my professional name is Dr. Anita Smith. My baptismal name is Alexandra. And so that's why I have the double first name, Anita Alexandra. But the Alexandra, when I hear it, reminds me of God in my life. And I spent a lot of years really struggling with the third step because I didn't know what I was turning my life and my will over to. And I didn't trust anything, and I wanted to control everything because I was so frightened my whole life. And I have to say, since 2009, and I was 19 years sober when this happened. I had been a spiritual seeker for 19 years in sobriety, trying to find something that made sense to me or that I felt, resonated in my soul. And then I won't go into the details, but I had this experience and a lot of things kind of came together. So I just want to say, if you're new in the program and you're not understanding like the spiritual life or what it means or God as we understand him, don't worry about it. Just keep coming back and keep seeking. And everybody has a very, very different spiritual journey. And it's one of the most exciting things that can happen in life. I find it now to be absolutely beautiful. And, my life has now taken on different dimensions. I have, my physical self, my intellectual life, my spiritual life, my relationships, and there's a richness that evolves over time in all the dimensions of life, but it's very, very slow. My recovery has been incredibly gradual. And, I've had many plateaus along the way where for a couple years at a time, it seemed like nothing was happening and nothing was going to change. And I've been through a lot of tough times in my sobriety, but everything has passed. Eventually everything just keeps evolving and growing and changing. And I really want to grow in wisdom and maturity. I don't just want to get older, I've had the opportunity to grow up because of this program. This program works. I've had people say to me that it didn't work for them. And all I can say is that when I came here and my heart was really in it, it has worked. And that's even when I've had a half-assed program. Even when my program hasn't been the best, it still works if I just do the basics. I find that now I have to do more in my recovery than I had to do in the beginning because I understand more. And I'm older. I need more care. I have to take care of myself a lot more than I used to. I can't burn the candle at both ends like I used to. I had mentioned that I drank a lot of coffee when I came in, and I abused caffeine so badly that a few years ago I hit a bottom with that. because it was making my life unmanageable. It got to the point where even a small amount was making me a nervous wreck. And that's kind of how it was with alcohol and drugs. Even a small amount would really, really mess me up. And I had to let that go a couple of years. And let me tell you, that was one of the hardest things that I've had to do in sobriety. Because now it's just me, right? I got to go to bed when I'm tired. I got to listen to my body, and it was a good thing, but it was not easy. And so I have to keep adapting to the changes that are going to happen as I continue to live and grow and become older and older. And I have wisdom to draw from in this program. I have people to talk to. No matter what I'm going through, I've always been able to find somebody who knows what I'm talking about. It might not be everybody, but there's always somebody out there who's had the same experience. If I'm willing to open up and share and not isolate, and that tendency to isolate does not go away. I still have that only child syndrome of closing up by myself, checking out, with books or music or whatever, and just getting into my own world, because it doesn't come naturally for me to be in relationships with other people. I have to work at that. But the alternative is to live a life of isolation like I used to. And the last thing I want to do being sober is live like I used to. I've had enough pain. I've had enough misery. I've had enough loneliness. And now I don't have to have it. It's truly optional. There are days where I fall back into it, but I don't stay there that long. Thank you. And, life in recovery has been truly beyond my wildest dreams. I never, ever would have known to ask for some of the things that have happened and some of the changes that have happened through me. A lot of them have happened through pain. And if you're going through pain right now, just keep going, because there's something good on the other side. So, it's really true that all things work together for the good for those who love this. And I'm really honored to be here. Siddiqui, thank you again. Thank you for letting me share with all of you, and thank you for keeping me sober today.
Prayer and meditation, step 11. What do you do? How do you do that? How does that work for you today?
I have a daily practice. The question was, when you talk about prayer and meditation, what is your practice today? Okay, so I have a daily practice of prayer and meditation that I've done for many years. It is kind of evolved over time. When I wake up, I meditate. I sit right next to the bed. I keep a cushion right there. And I do a breathing meditation where I focus on a word. And the in-breath is the first syllable. The out-breath is the second syllable. And I meditate for 12 minutes. I read in a book that after the first 12 minutes of meditation, you've gotten all of the maximum amount of change in the brain. So I stop at 12. And then I do some spiritual readings and some journaling, and I write a letter to God. It's kind of like a hands-on practical third step every morning. I try to pray throughout the day, and then in the evening, I do a short reading before bed and pray. Yes.
How did you deal with your mother in sobriety?
The question is, how did you deal with your mother in sobriety? Thank you for the question. My relationship with my mother was a really, really difficult relationship. We were really at odds through my entire life when I was using. I was really angry at her. I blamed her for my parents' divorce, and I just hated her a lot of the time. And I thought that she was my problem. And after I got sober, slowly our relationship started to heal. Not until I was in my 40s, really, did it really start getting better. I mean, she had a lot of her issues. She never sought any kind of help. I had my issues, and over the years, we've gotten really close, and today it's the best it's ever been, and we're very good friends, and that's a real miracle. Now I see her very differently. I now see her as the only person who was ever there for me. You know, I think mothers kind of get a raw deal. And she was really the only person in my whole life who was ever consistently there, who really showed up for me. And it took me 50 years to appreciate that. And I wish I had appreciated it sooner, but I'm glad I'm here now. And she knows it, and I know it, and we love each other to death. Yes.
All right, would you be willing to talk more about your spiritual experience? Did it come unexpectedly, or were you searching for it, or what were the circumstances?
The question is, would I be willing to talk more about my spiritual experience? Did it come unexpectedly? Was I searching for it, or what were the circumstances? Yeah, I'd be happy to. I was always searching spiritually for some kind of relationship with God. And I didn't even know what I was searching for, or what God, or what religion, or anything like that. And I basically tried everything over the years that crossed my mind or crossed my path. You know, anything that I thought could deepen me spiritually, I would do it. Like a meditation group, I'd go to everybody's church and this and that. One night, my husband and I were out to dinner with a woman named Bean. And she mentioned to me that she had read this book that completely changed her life. It's called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And I was pretty impressed by that statement. And I got the book. I didn't read it. And about a year later, Bean tripped over her German Shepherd in her house and broke her neck and died. And she was only in her 60s. It was a very strange thing that happened. Well, I decided to read the book. And that book had the most powerful impact on me of any book I had ever read in my life. I was so drawn to it, I had to keep reading it over and over again. It tied in very nicely with the program, but it was very practical, and it gave you like really practical solutions about how to deal with insecurity and worry and anxiety and fear. And at one point in the book, Norman Vincent Peale talked about Quakers, because he had been a friend of the Quakers. And I thought, I have Quaker roots. And I started going back to Quaker meeting in D.C. And during that time, my husband and I were taking a friend of ours to speak at an event given by my father in Baltimore. And she mentioned that she was part of a Bible study. And I just had this feeling like I want to check it out, just like I always wanted to check everything out. So I went to this thing. It was called the Alpha Course. And I thought it was really interesting. I was not like crazy about it, but what happened during this Alpha Course, in the middle of it, there was a retreat, which I didn't want to go to. I was actually at an extremely low point, emotionally and spiritually. Ron and I were in the middle of a big fight at this time of this retreat. And my friend said, "Oh, come on, let's go, I'll take you." And I went to this retreat, and a woman prayed with me. And that's when I had the experience. And I had about a 12-day, very intense spiritual experience after that prayer. And then I kind of, one thing led to another, and I became an Episcopalian. And that's what happened. Yes, ma'am. Last question. Okay, the question is, how did you find your sponsor, and why did you choose her? How did you choose her? I've had a very interesting journey with sponsorship. My first sponsor I got, she was just happened to be at one of my first meetings, and I rented a room in her house and lived with her. And there was this night where I had double booked dates, and I had 2 dates at one time, and I could only go on one. So she went on the other one, and she drank with that guy that night. And I thought, I should probably move out, So I moved on from that sponsor. I then got another sponsor, a woman that I liked the way she looked, right? I thought she was cool and funny, and she dressed really well and all this stuff. So I asked her to be my sponsor. She reminded me of Jackie O. And she was my sponsor for like 12 years. And then she drank. And she's back in the program now. She's no longer my sponsor. And after that, I was really leery of me picking sponsors. But so I went a little while without a sponsor, but then I really knew I needed one. I wanted one, And the way I picked my sponsor, and we've been together for over 10 years now, I was at a meeting I never go to, and I sensed that she had strength in her voice. And she talked about getting through the death of her parents. And that was something that really scares me and still does. And I saw she was okay. And I just thought she was very spiritually strong. She, looks-wise, professionally-wise, didn't have anything I wanted. But spiritually, she had a real strength that kind of reminded me of my grandmother. And we were leaving the meeting, just walking down the street. And I just didn't know her. I said, will you be my sponsor? And she said, well, let's give it a try. And we've been together over 10 years. So that was kind of like dumb luck, or was it God or something? I don't know. But that's it. So, okay.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.